What's goody? It's your host Shay Rose as always, and we have gone through an off season of a lot of moves, and there's a lot of teams that think that their team is a contender for a championship this season. I'm gonna go over some of those top teams and I'm gonna give my opinion on them. Let's get into it. Over 90% of the people that watch my content are not subscribed, so if you're messing with the videos, please hit that sub button and the noti bell so you'll get notified every time I upload. But let's get back to the hoops. The first team I want to get into made probably the most notable signing of the entire offseason, and that's the Philadelphia 76ers. They had additions including Andre Drummond, Kelly Oubre, Eric Gordon, Reggie Jackson, Yerson Yabusele, aka a guy that I know from 2K back in the day that fell out the league and then just dunked on Bron in the Olympics. He played really well though. I don't want to make it seem like he got a contract because he dunked on Bron, but he played really well in the Olympics. I'm sure that dunk definitely helped him, and he got a contract. And their most key signing, Paul George. And I want to speak on the Paul George signing by itself because I feel like Paul George really just hasn't been all that these past couple of seasons. I feel like once we get into the playoffs, you start to see cracks in his game. The consistency goes down. The shots that he would usually hit, they're just not there. He can't hit a side of the house. I don't understand how we go from one of the best shooters in the league to I can't get a bucket at all. Even in this last playoffs when he went up against the Mavericks, it just wasn't a great look for Paul George. So if it was just Paul George going to Philly, I'd have a lot more questions because just Paul George is not fixing all those issues and he's not consistent enough for me to go, all right, boom, you added Paul George, you're going to the finals. But you got Andre Drummond, who he plays goofy sometimes. His decision making is not the best, but he had a really good season last year in Chicago. Very underrated season last year because he was on the Bulls. Nobody cared. You got Eric Gordon, who's been one of the best snipers in the league his entire career. He's been just shooting on some pretty mediocre teams the past couple of seasons. I think he had a stint with the Clippers, and they were a pretty good team. But he was with Phoenix last season. He was with the Rockets, and the Rockets have been in rebuilding / kind of getting their mode these past couple of seasons. I mean, Eric Gordon is a really good pickup in my opinion. He's gonna shoot the rock. He's gonna shoot the rock. Is his defense gonna be there? Probably not. But they also got Kelly Oubre. Kelly Oubre had a great season for them last year. He outplayed his contract. I'm glad they got the chance to re-sign him. And also Reggie Jackson. I just think Reggie Jackson's nice. Reggie Jackson as your backup point guard, I think that's a great choice. And this also brings me to my next point about this team. I think they're really eerily similarly built to the Nuggets now, and I feel like their roster construction would just obviously Maxey in the Murray role, you got Paul George in the MPJ role, and he's a bigger name and a much better defender. So from that aspect, you could see like that they could possibly like be even ahead of them if things work out the way that they're supposed to. Paul George. But yeah, and Joel Embiid, obviously that's where Jokic would be. They have a lot of depth now. I like the moves that they made in the offseason. I don't know how high I am on this team. If, like I said, if everything clicks, Paul George doesn't get hurt, Joel Embiid doesn't get hurt, Tyrese Maxey doesn't get hurt, they're meshing, Paul George is playing how he's supposed to, Maxey builds up for last season, hopefully Embiid low-key gets a chance to take a step off the gas a little bit so he can preserve his legs. But if they're actually nice next season, I think they could be nice. Like I said, it's really the off-season moves other than Paul George, what they also surrounded themselves with, that makes me feel like that. So I'm going to say yes, the Sixers are real contenders out east. That was very long-winded. I just talked for a whole 4 minutes. My next team, and the reason I even wanted to make this video in the first place, the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I am back on another day to re-talk about the Timberwolves because they made a deal. The Timberwolves traded Karl Anthony Towns for Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo, and I'm not sure how much this changes my opinion on the Timberwolves because when we get down to a matchup-to-matchup basis, I still think that there's some teams that can take them down and impede their progress in making a finals push. However, I do think this is a move that addressed some of their issues, especially with their rim attacking aggression and also their shooting and shot creation, to be honest. Like I said, I feel like Karl Anthony Towns is really good on the perimeter as a big guy, but he's limited to what he can do at certain times because of his stature. He just doesn't have everything in the toolbox. Like I said, really good perimeter player for a big guy, one of the best big man shooters, if not the best big man shooter ever. But it just wasn't enough. And we saw that in the playoffs when Karl Anthony Towns was out of his comfort zone and we made him go make plays in the paint. He was cool at times, but you can clearly see he was not that same player that he was in the regular season. And Julius Randle, his rim attacking aggression is way better. I think he's a much better player at the rim. His handles a lot better than Karl Anthony Towns. He can play make a little bit more. I think he fits in that 4 spot better than Karl Anthony Towns would. I also believe that Julius Randle is a better playmaker, so I feel like that's just giving somebody that you can put the ball in their hands, and it kind of relieves some of that pressure off of Anthony Edwards in the playoffs when you're gonna have to force the ball out of Edwards' hands. I feel like it's better for Julius Randle to catch it on the perimeter than for Karl Anthony Towns. Also, for the Timberwolves, I feel like this move in terms of Cat and Julius will end up being pretty lateral for them offensively. Karl Anthony Towns last year averaged 21 points, 8 rebounds, and I think Julius Randle averaged 24 and 10. So Julius Randle has low-key been one of the best power forwards in the NBA recently in the past couple of seasons, and I think he's very underrated. But there's also some negatives. I think Julius Randle has a lot of the same issues when it comes to consistency in the playoffs. How that works as a number 2 option with most of the defense focusing on Anthony Edwards, we'll see, but I don't think game planning for Julius Randle has been overtly hard for teams. So switching out Cat for Julius Randle, there's still some of those same issues there, which is why I think the most important player in this deal was Donte DiVincenzo. And although I don't think he will start, there's no room for him to really start. They have Mike Conley at the 1. I don't really want to put DiVincenzo at my 1. They have Ant at the 2. That's a non-negotiable. And they have Jaden McDaniels, who's too valuable as a defender only. You can forget about the offense. I said he was going to take a big leap. I'm expecting Jaden McDaniels to take a big leap. My hot take is that he's going to win Most Improved Player this season. But even without that, just what he brings on the defensive side of the ball, DiVincenzo is not going to start over anybody in that starting 5, I don't believe. But to have a guy who can create his own shot, hit open shots, he's a decent playmaker as well, he's sneaky athletic, I think Donte DiVincenzo is exactly what they needed. They need more scoring, they needed more ball handling, they needed more shot creation, and bringing these 2 players off of the Knicks onto this team absolutely helps them with that. My entire issue with this team and why I don't think this trade moves the needle too much, I think offensively they did get better. If they were here, they're here now offensively for sure. I think defensively, this did not help your case. Julius Randle, I'm not afraid of that on defense. Julius Randle on defense is not putting any fear in my heart. I'm licking my chops when I see Julius Randle on the defensive side of the floor. And let's say the matchup is Mavericks Timberwolves again, and we get the same scenario. I think it goes the same way, if not worse this time, since we have Klay Thompson. I don't see the Timberwolves getting past the Mavericks. I don't see the Timberwolves getting past the Thunder. I can see them getting past the Nuggets. But I think there's a lot of teams that you're going to have to work for that. You're going to have to really go out there and get those wins. I think the Lakers can hang with them. It's going to be a tough Western Conference. I think the Timberwolves are one of the better teams in the Western Conference, but I don't know if they're contenders. This Timberwolves team, and also all of the Timberwolves fans that I see on Twitter, are pretty much hoping Anthony Edwards has another huge jump. I don't know how much bigger of a jump Anthony Edwards is going to take within 1 year. I feel like he already took a really big jump last year. Could he do it again? Go average 30, go crazy this season? Absolutely he could. But I don't know. What did Anthony Edwards average last year? He averaged 25.9 points per game. I think that could go to up to maybe 27, 28, but I don't think he's going to do anything super duper crazy this season. I think he's going to get a little bit better, but I don't see him taking a huge giant jump this year. I really don't. Who I do see taking a bigger jump this season is Jaden McDaniels, and they kind of need him to. What I watched from him in the playoffs is that he absolutely has the ability to score more than 10 points on a night-to-night basis. If you could get Jaden McDaniels to actually consistently create his own shot, hit open shots, that will open up the game for the T-Wolves offensively crazy. If Jaden McDaniels can become an actual threat, which I'm just going to go out and be the guy that predicts it. Jaden Daniels is going to win Most Improved Player this season because they kind of need it. They need it. They need that offense. He has the ability to give them that offense, and he just doesn't do it. So I hope that what we saw in the playoffs was not a fluke. I hope he can come out and actually produce the same way he was producing in the playoffs, giving them those games. Anthony Edwards said, y'all got KD, we got Jaden Daniels, and he lived up to that for the games. He lived up for that in the series. So I hope Jaden Daniels can actually take a step. That will make the Timberwolves a lot better. But they didn't do anything in terms of signing or trading to do anything better and get this roster any better than it already was. So now we're in a spot where the Mavericks are getting better. We got the Thunder getting better. And those are two teams that I feel like you're going to have to face. You know you can beat the Nuggets. The Nuggets got a little bit worse. I feel like there's some other teams, like maybe the Lakers, I feel like could give the Timberwolves a run for their money. I don't know if finals bound is where this team is going this season. Unless Karl-Anthony Towns turns the clock back to like his sophomore third year in the league where he's averaging like 26 points and whatever the case may be. But as is, based on what I saw last year, the problems they had last year, they didn't really address those problems in the offseason at all. I'm going to say they're not contenders. The next team that I have on this list is the Cleveland Cavaliers. Let's get into their offseason additions. Imani Bates. That's it. Imani Bates. That's it. Like, I don't understand how you're a team that has a clear hole in your roster and you do nothing. You make no trades. This is a team that I personally don't think is built well. You can go check out my thoughts on the Cavs in the NBA's middle child video. It was a great video. I'll check it out. But I just believe the Cavs have really big glaring holes in how their roster is built. They have a lot of redundancy. They have a lot of players that are the same stature, the same speed, and do the same things, but they're not, that doesn't really mesh well together. You need players to come in and do other things. You need players to come in and be a little bigger, a little stronger, play some defense, be able to just be really, really good off ball. You need players to be more dynamic and not to knock Karis LeVert, but they need more talent at that 3 spot. They do. And just the fact that they didn't address that at all, they addressed nothing. They don't really have money to address anything either. I'm not sure. Like I said, I don't want to make it seem like I'm ragging on them. I think the Cavs are a really, really good team. A team like the Pacers, who a lot of people are high on, I think the Cavs are better than the Pacers, to be honest. I think the Cavs could probably hang with a lot of these other teams, but I just don't think they can hang with Boston. I don't see a world where the Cavs beat Boston in the 7-game series. I just don't. I don't think they match up well against that team at all. I think the spacing of those Celtics is just too much for them. The height and the defensive players on the Celtics are absolutely going to bother that team. Like, the fact that you have 2 players who will specifically match up against your other 2 players and they're defensive minded, that's kind of tough. Just that alone makes me feel like, because you can't do the same thing to the Celtics. You can't. Any of those 5 guys on the court will score. I just don't see them beating that team. They don't have the means to check them, but the Celtics have the means to check the Cavs. So I don't see them beating them. I think they match up pretty decent against New York, especially if they can't get a center, because the Knicks don't really have a good center right now outside of Mitchell Robinson, who's probably going to be injured for most of the year. I don't see them beating the Knicks. I don't see them beating the Celtics. I honestly don't see them beating Philly either, so I'm going to give them a no. I'm going to say the Cavs are not contenders this season. Dark horse team, maybe. I don't think they're contenders. Last but not least, we have the Denver Nuggets, and I'm going to get into their key additions. Dario Saric was their first signing, and their key signing of the offseason was Russell Westbrook. And I just don't know how I feel about that, having your key signing be Russell Westbrook in 2024. No knock on Russ. I love Russ, man, but I just feel like you need more. You need more. They've been losing out on pieces year after year after year. There's a lot of players that have left this team already from their championship run. They just keep losing players. So I feel like you have to get something in return and possibly look to shake things up. I feel like there's opportunities for you to get a player that's a little bit better than Michael Porter Jr. at the 3 spot. Obviously, MPJ has been good for them. Last year he was not. But I don't know. I feel like this team is losing and they're not evolving. I could be lying, because Jokic is Jokic, and because they have Jokic, that changes a lot. Jokic is still one of the best players, if not the best player in the NBA. And I feel like any team with Jokic on it is going to do pretty decent. The Westbrook signing, I think it will help them to have someone who can jumpstart their offense, be an engine for their offense on the bench. So Jokic can not have to do that. So Jokic doesn't have to do that 24/7. Have Russ come in, give the energy, run the offense. How good he still is at that in this day and age, we gonna find out. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not one of those dudes that drag on Westbrook for the Lakers, because he was not even that bad on the Lakers. If you want to talk about it, he averaged like 18, 7, and 7. The eye test was horrible. He was shooting off the backboard on the middies. He was hitting the top of the backboard on the middies, but he wasn't that bad. If the Nuggets can get 18, 7, and 7 off the bench, I don't think they will. And I also hate that we're talking about Russell Westbrook being a journeyman sixth man. Bro, all my childhood players are gone, bro. That's so crazy, bro. Yeah, mad old, bro. Yeah, but Westbrook off the bench, if he can do that for their offense, I think that would be awesome. I don't know what their plans are. I hope they don't plan to start him, unless they're planning on moving Jamal Murray to the 2, but I think just leaving Jamal Murray at the 1 is fine. I feel like he's comfortable there, and Joker and Murray, they work off each other really well in that 1-5 duo, so I would just let them rock. Put Westbrook on the bench. Dario Saric is actually a really good signing, and I think he's going to be good for this team, especially because he kind of like, if you were to have Russ and Dario on the court at the same time, I think that would be a really good tandem off the bench. Also, putting him in the starting 5, like, it's going to be tough. Those are two really good offensive big men. If you have him and Joker on the floor, they still got Gordon, of course. I'm going to say that they're contenders, but they're like a piece away from not being, and not a big piece either. They can keep their entire starting 5, and if they lose out on even just Saric, I feel like that changes a lot. If they lose out on Westbrook, that changes a lot. If they lose out on Christian Brown, bro, I just don't think this team is what they were last year, or what they were supposed to be last year. They were this big, we just won the championship, nobody can stop us, our offense is a well-oiled machine. And going into this season, I think they're going to be really good still. They still have Jokic, they still have Murray, they still have all those guys. But I just don't see them being this giant beast of a team that we thought they were last season. Contenders, yeah. I'll still give them contenders. I feel like it wasn't lightning in a bottle for Jokic to play like that. He consistently goes into the playoffs and dominates. And as long as he's doing that, they're going to be contenders. That's just how I feel about it. But yeah. I feel like they're gonna need a lot from their core guys, because they don't have too much off the bench anymore. And honestly, they need to find a good spacing too, because they did not fill that gap that KCP left, and I feel like that could be more significant than we give credit for. So keep an eye on that, but I'm gonna say that they're still contenders. And that is it for the video. I feel like I just went on a rant about each one of those teams. Let me know about any teams that you feel like are contenders or not contenders. It doesn't have to be the 4 that I just named. I feel like a lot of people are going to be like, what? How are the Cavs not? Actually, a lot of people agree with the Cavs. Let me shut up. Let me catch you on the next one.